So, welcome to another show. Today we have Antonio Iannella on the show, who is an author, musician, and a stroke survivor. So, welcome to today's show.
Thank you, mate. Thank you, Javen, for having me. Nice to be here.
My pleasure. So, let's start with the elephant in the room. You
Sure.
had a stroke and you survived it. What was that experience like for you?
As you can imagine, it was quite frightening, especially because it happened while we were on a family holiday in Vietnam. And it was just moments before we were about to enter into underground war tunnels in a little village called Cu Chi. And I just felt weak and within like 10 minutes just lost complete function of every part of my body. I was paralyzed. I couldn't see. I couldn't speak. I couldn't hear. Um, so, yeah, that was just the scariest thing I've ever been through.
So, did it sort of come out of the blue, or if you sort of think back, were there any sort of telltale signs for the weeks,
Yeah,
days, and months before that maybe something didn't feel right, or was it literally a case of it being out of the blue?
it's pretty much out of the blue. I've never been unwell. I've always been a person in fact, I had never been in hospital prior to what happened. My health has generally been well, pretty good. The only sign there was, which would happen about 10 minutes before the actual stroke took place, it was we arrived at the tunnels, the Cu Chi war tunnels. And as I was about to step off the tour bus, I felt a tingle in my palms and a rumble in my ears. And I just sort of shook it off. You know how you get those sort of little sensations across your body? I just shook it off and thought, oh, what was that? That was weird. And then walked through the grounds and into what was like a shelter to watch footage of the Vietnam War, and that's when it began.
So, what was the experience like at the time? Was it something that sort of, and I'll just use a personal example. Do you know when you've injured yourself, you go that tunnel vision where nothing else matters but your own injury, your own survival? Was that something that you experienced?
You're spot on, mate. You just become locked in with yourself. Well, I did anyway. I was just locked within myself because I lost complete control, but I could still think okay, not able to speak. So I just sort of, I don't know, almost bunkered down and just held on as much as I could and just let whoever was around me take care of me and drag me and carry me and lift me. And I just was just, floating off to another space. Like I wasn't part of what was happening.
Do you know what caused it? Was obviously I'm assuming you
Yeah,
spoke to doctors and things like that.
sure.
Was there an underlying cause for you specifically, or was it a general thing that causes stroke?
No, it was an underlying cause. It was just one of those random things. I was born with a weak vein in my brain stem. This condition is called artery vein malformation. So basically, that tiny vein didn't form correctly from birth, and it's a fairly rare condition. 1% of the global population have this artery vein malformation or an AVM, and then a very small percentage of those people have them in their brainstem, which is where I had mine, and it just erupted and bled at the age of 38, and statistically they bleed between the ages of 30 and 40. So that's what caused
So
the
so
stroke.
so since a stroke, and again, I'm talking from general experience here. What you tend to find with people who have gone through something life changing, where they've survived, whether it's cancer, heart attack, stroke, they get a couple of senses. One is the the pride of, and I'll probably use the word pride in the wrong context, but proud of themselves for overcoming whatever they overcome, and also that they're now a lot more grateful for things in their life than they maybe took for granted before. Are they sort of things that you've experienced, or
Yeah, yeah,
is it
spot on.
something
Yeah.
else that you've experienced at much greater levels than those few things?
that was exactly what I felt, and some additional things like overcoming when I was able to get back to walking and achieving some of the real basic things like for the first 2 or 3 weeks I couldn't even sit up. My body was like jelly, so I couldn't even sit up, and just achieving those little things like going from complete paralyzed to being able to sit up, and then being able to use my hands to pick up a drink cup, and then being able to feed myself, and then able to get some words out, and then able to move myself from the bed to the wheelchair. And then this went on for a few months. And then once I was able to walk, I don't know, just this amazing sense of hope kicked in. And I began to frame things in a way where I was grateful for what I had. It wasn't an overnight thing. It was a slow transition where I began to focus on what I still had. Sorry, bit emotional.
No, it's fine. It's really a difficult thing, isn't it? When you go through something so life changing, and especially with an adult head. And for example, if you're a child and you fall down learning to walk, you don't really contemplate it. You brush it off, and you continue to keep trying to walk. The same thing may happen when you learn to ride a bike. You learn to ride a bike, and you fall off, and you get back up. And it's because you're not in a position as a child where you care about things and you can't overthink things, and you just get up and you continue to move along. I think the difficult thing is when things happen to you as you're older, you look at them with an old head on, don't you? And you think about all the things that you could do, and you are now basically trying to walk again,
Yeah.
but with an adult brain, if that makes sense. You've
Yeah.
already experienced so many times running around and doing things, playing with the kids, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm assuming, what you found very, very difficult, coming to terms with
Yes.
the fact that you had to relearn everything. And probably at the time you didn't maybe think that that was ever going to happen. Obviously that was the goal probably for you, but maybe there was an element before the hope kicked in that maybe might not happen.
Yes, it's the analytical mind where you just looking back at everything you've lost. And as I was saying, there was that transition for me when hope started kicking in, and then I began to, for the first few months, I was just looking at what I had lost, and then I began to reframe that and look at what I can do, what I still had, and how I can build from that. And I began to look at things like making music, getting back to what I love, which is making music, creativity. And I let go of that previous life. And in the book, I talk about it being like the Severin of a previous life, and just picking the best of what I had and sort of compiling it into something new, and just finding ways on how to. And I was still in hospital, still in bed, and barely, just walking and starting to write notes down and coming up with some ideas. I wanted to do this, I want to do that. I'm going to get back, I want to finish that album I've been working on for the last 5 years, that just didn't have the time to finish. So that's what I focused on, just starting to rebuild a new future.
Yeah, I think there's a phrase along the lines of think of yourself as dead and take what's left and live life properly, essentially. And actually, sometimes when things like that happen, you can refocus, can't you? And maybe, from what you've just said, there's maybe a new time pressure for you. Actually, you could have come off a lot worse than you have done. Maybe you're like,
Yeah.
well, actually, yeah, bang. These are the important things in my life at the minute, and I'm going to make sure that I'm focusing my energy on that. Because a lot of the
Yeah.
time, when people haven't gone through something as difficult as what you have, life's very simple for them in too simplified way. They don't have any time pressure, they don't have any goals or ambitions, and they don't really understand what's important to them because they haven't had anything sort of temporarily taken away, if that makes sense. Is that something that
Yes.
you can really feel deep within yourself, that actually there are things I want to accomplish, and I'm going to make sure that, as you said about the album, the book, etc., is that something that's now at the forefront of your mind?
Yeah, it's basically, this is part of the gratitude that I feel daily, that I'm now able to focus my energy on achieving goals, but not goals focused on success in the terms of, you know, look what I've achieved, and I've just sold 1,000 copies, or 100,000 copies of my album, but more about the journey of the experience of creating something, and stepping back and looking at, I just created that artwork, and it's brought me a lot of joy. So that whole experience was what I focused on, and I do that daily now. It's become just part of my life, and even through the process of making music, I had to find a way to create, because I couldn't play the guitar anymore, because this left hand has been affected where I couldn't fret a guitar properly. So I just began tinkering about one-handed on a piano, an old piano that I had, and just started building it from there, and you know getting inspired and getting motivated. Ideas were coming together, and it just felt like this energy channeled through me, and I was able to put everything I've been through into some kind of art form, and that brought me a lot of joy.
I think
And that's what I focus on.
I think that's a great perspective as well. Is that once you've come back, you've sort of redesigned your ambitions, and the positive is that you've redefined it and understood that the important thing is not consumption but production. To produce
Yes.
something, to create something, to be an engineer, an artist, a musician, a creator, an author, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to create and to put something out into the world that's going to generate value for others.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
especially for people who have gone through or are going through or will go through something similar to what you've gone through,
Yes.
your book is going to be very, very helpful as a resource for them.
Sure. Yeah. That was the intention. And as you were saying that, I was totally agreeing with that. That when you're in the process of creativity, I think for most creators or artists, it isn't about the outcome. It's more about the process. And I think when you focus on the process, you're a little bit more authentic in what you're producing. And at the end, I mean, obviously, you get to a point where you need to start thinking about promoting and getting it out into the world. But that's a byproduct of why you're doing it. For me, anyway. For me, it's more about the process, and just completely getting lost in the creative journey.
Yeah, it's a case of soul searching, isn't it? I think once you're involved in creating something, I'm similar to you in the respect of I've written a few books, and I understand
Okay,
that
yeah,
process of figuring out what you want to do, setting out a structure, starting to write, sitting there sometimes thinking, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I don't know the next couple of bits that I'm going to do. Sometimes before you even sit down, I had to do something today, editing for another book that I've almost completed. And I didn't even want to start it because writing the book's okay, but when you've got to go back and you've got to edit stuff and you've got input from developmental editors and things like that, I've put this off for a good week now. But I'm like, today I've got to sit down. This is the thing. There's a great poem by Charles Bukowski called "If You Want to Be a Writer." I'm not going to bastardize it, but for anyone who has heard that, listen to it. It's really great. About unless it comes bursting out of you, you're not ready. Unless you have that idea to drive you to write the book, you're not ready. However, there are some other bits that is where discipline comes in as well. You can have all the
yes,
creativity and the ability to just continue to write and have an idea and put it through, but there's parts of that process that you're going to absolutely hate. Reading the same thing 50 times, going back and editing it, getting input from others, and having to go back and restructure things that not only happens at the start, but then you have to restructure throughout because you're referencing other parts, and that can be a right ball ache. But
uh,
nothing in life is as simple as, even if you enjoy something on the whole. So let's say you're a football player, soccer player, for those in America, you probably love being a football player. But there's going to be days when you absolutely hate running 20 kilometres, 30 kilometres in a training session. There's going to be days where you hate having or not being able to drink a beer, and you're having to eat these protein and carb diets that taste like shit for you. And it's part and parcel of your primary objective.
yeah,
And I'm sure you
yeah,
found that actually, while you're writing the book, especially about something so sensitive to yourself, that there was parts of the time that it was probably driving a lot of emotion there. But obviously, if you've got that goal, there are parts of it that aren't going to be amazing to do. But what you want to do is you want to create something. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's and to when you said about the emotion, that's what drove the story. I consciously the discipline. I consciously went to the library daily during my writing, especially in the last draft. I went to the library with my laptop and just wrote and wrote and blocked out 4 hours to write. And I'd be sitting in the library, bawling my eye, not out loud, but tears streaming down my face, and just reliving some of those moments from the collapse to some of the steps through the recovery, because it was part of the journey, and the discipline had to be there. And I think once you get to a point where you're achieving things and it feels so good, the discipline is easier to maintain. And often I find that when I need to wait for motivation or an idea, they're not reliable. So I find that I put action before motivation. I'll just say something. Okay, I'm just going to read this chapter I wrote this week, and I'll give it an edit. And then before I know it, I'm restructuring the whole thing, and then I'm moving on to the next chapter.
Yeah,
So action sometimes creates motivation.
yeah. I think they work hand in hand. This is why there's an argument about, is it motivation? Is it discipline? They have to work together. You have to be motivated to start in the first place, and you have to then be disciplined to continue to do that.
Yes.
I don't think you can start something without some level of impetus or motivation to do it. But the discipline is what gets it finished. The
Yes.
motivation is
Yeah.
what starts it. And there's no, they do say that the hardest part is the start, but and that's because most people don't do anything. They don't start anything. But actually, the most difficult part in terms of the grind, the consistency, the shit parts are finishing it off, and that's where discipline comes
Yeah.
in, and sticking to a
Yeah.
routine. Like you'll see people go to the gym and they motivate themselves to get there, but halfway through the workout they just go back home because they're not
Yeah.
disciplined to finish through with the circuit that they had planned or whatever else. Just a
Yeah.
quick aside, just as a writer to a writer, author to author. Are you a planner or a pantser, as I think as they call it, where you either plan out the book in detail kind of before you write it, or do you just sort of write it off the cuff?
I went through a very long writing process. This version that I've published was effectively the second big draft or a rewrite. Um, so I began without any idea, and I just went in. I thought, I've got this story. Was on a family holiday in Vietnam. I had a stroke, and I was in intensive care, clinging to life. There was a rescue flight home to Melbourne, and then the recovery process, and then getting back to music and making an album. And I thought, there's a story in that. And I've always enjoyed creativity, so I just got into writing, and I had no idea of what I was doing. I just wrote and wrote and wrote, and just found that after doing that, I just wasn't really telling a story. So then I got involved with the creative writing group from the library. And then that's when I began to understand more about structure and storytelling. And I developed that skill. But also, I found that through songwriting, it gave me that they supported each other, because I found that I could explore ideas that may not be necessarily about what I'm talking about, but somehow tell a story in some kind of obscure way that connects it to the story. So I began to explore things like that. And in terms of planning, the planning I kind of did was I'd go out for walks and I'd sort of brainstorm ideas, and then just might make bullet points in my phone, and then come home and then build
Yeah,
those ideas into
yeah.
story form.
I think that's a very common way now for people to use their phone in a positive way. Like
Yeah,
we all talk about the shit side of a phone. Your Instagram, you're scrolling through
yeah,
Facebook and TikTok and all that shit. But there's so many positives on your phone. You can email from anywhere. You can do
yeah,
notes on your phone. You can watch educational videos, podcasts. You've got apps to learn languages. it depends what you use that resource for. I'm very much the same. I'll do shopping lists on my phone. I'll do to-do lists for the day. I'll put down things that pop into my head, ideas, put them down because you'll forget them. And then when I go back on, oh shit, I forgot about that idea. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
try it. And it might be that that idea goes nowhere, but at least I revisited it with a different head
yeah.
on. And
That's
it's good. It's what you seek finds you. You said after a while you realised that you needed some assistance maybe in the planning side, and you sort that out. Before writing a book, you would never even know those things existed. And
exactly what happened.
it's called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, where it's
Yeah,
like a car. Let's say that you were looking at buying a red BMW, you would start seeing red BMWs everywhere. It's called the
yeah,
Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, and it's the same thing. When you start writing a book, you start noticing other authors and publishing this, publishing that. What's the structure of a story? You're watching Lord of the Rings, and you start looking at the character arcs and things like that. And it's what your mind focuses on. And what you'll
yeah,
probably have found is that
yeah.
came because of that.
That's exactly what happened. Exactly that. I was just becoming so much aware that my brain was opening up and noticing things that it hadn't before. Little ideas I'd have, where I was able to develop into bigger ideas, and it was all just focusing more on storyline and, like you said, reading other books and watching movies and seeing the character arcs and seeing how the characters were portrayed, and then sort of applying those ideas to my writing.
Yeah, we'll
So
come on to talk about the book in a little bit more detail in a moment. I just want to, because this is a self improvement and philosophy based
sure,
podcast. I want to ask a
okay,
few more pertinent questions because I think this does give a good insight into the psyche of a human being and
sure.
the what people go through. Because you've been through such a big thing, is there a difficulty in balancing sort of forgetting it and also okay, let's put it another way. A balance between sort of remembering it and knowing that that is part of you, but not letting it define you too much. Does that make sense? Is there a balance between
Yeah.
the two?
Um, it's a hard balance for me because I still have some physical problems, a disability that I live with. So it's a hard balance, and I'm always torn between respecting what my stroke, if you like, needs from me and what I need from life. And I've got to kind of tread carefully because if I overdo it, I can hit a brick wall and need to just not do anything for a few days. So it's constant juggling act. So it's hard to not allow it to define you, but um, at the same time, I don't let it stop me from doing what I want to do. I just find ways around it. And obviously, I can't do
Yeah,
things like climb mountains and stuff, but yeah, there's so much more that I can do.
yeah. I mean, it's good that you said that you find a way, and I think that's one of the great things about human beings is, I think again another phrase is something like, they built most nobly when limitations were greatest. And sometimes when sometimes things are going badly, you find ways to get things done. You'll actually like, well, actually, maybe I have got some physical issues at the moment which are improving, but I can sit down, I can write, I can use my mind. So I think that's really good that you've done that. Is there any
Yeah.
side of you as well? Because I know for myself, when something's happened to me or I have got ill, there's a sense of embarrassment in some respects. Have you managed to sort of get rid of that now and overcome that and think, well, actually, so what? People get ill. There's no embarrassment from my side.
Yeah. Most part, yes. I do sometimes am confronted with situations where it's a bit difficult, where it may be in an environment where it's unfamiliar and someone is expecting me to physically perform in a certain way, and I'm confronted with not being able to do that. It's just a moment of confrontation, and it's also self awareness, and not, I wouldn't say being ashamed, but just we all want to be part of the community. It's part of our our DNA to be connected with people. So there's that component that sometimes plays on my mind, but generally I'm okay. Little things like, for example, if I might be challenged to walk through a very narrow section of where people are seated, and then there might be feet that I need to step over. And most people will just walk through there, but I'm always, having to go, okay, I think I'll just leave that because I'm going to trip over and I don't want to make a fool of myself. So I'll wait to go to the bathroom when the space clears up. So those kind of confrontations.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like you're carrying the burden well. Obviously everyone's carrying burdens. Some are like more burdensome than others in that respect. And obviously, if it's something that's threatened your life, it's something that you will carry. How do you think the handling of the burden has changed over time from the immediate aftermath to obviously today?
It's gotten better my health has gotten better and my ability has gotten better. So that's enabled me to feel a little bit less self-conscious. That's where it's helped. But yeah, like I said, it's always something on my mind. And I even know other stroke survivors who are also confronted with that, where they'll look at something that they need to do and it just looks too hard and they'll just avoid it. But with time, I think it's been quite a lot, many years for me. So part of the healing process isn't just about healing physically, but it's also adapting to being who you are, a new you, and finding comfort with just acceptance. And this is the way it is, and I can't change it. So I just got to keep going and develop that mindset where people generally just understand. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think people paint humans with a bad brush sometimes, but your average person is very, very empathetic. They are
yeah,
helpful, um, and yeah, we're here for each other. I'm sure you've got a community behind you as well
yes,
that look
yeah,
out for you, and I think that's really, really important. Whether it's a stroke or whether it's another physical ailment, or it's something that people are going through mentally, or it's just a community of people who like a particular hobby or interest. I think it's nice
yeah,
to have people who want to discuss or experience that specific thing together. Because it
yeah,
does help to bounce ideas off each other. Same
yeah.
reason that big businesses have different individuals in the same room, one from finance, one from sales, one from operations, etc. It's called the mastermind principle, where you together can create another mind that can generate ideas. And I think you'll probably find that in your side as well.
Yeah, I did find that connecting with other people who've been through similar experiences very helpful for my own journey. Like you said, just bouncing ideas off each other. And you might not take everyone's idea, but that you might apply that, you might try that, and that works for you. And then this, and you share what you've been through, and you create that little community. And there's also another level of understanding when you're connecting with people who've been through what you have. So
Yeah,
it's completely different just to speaking to someone who hasn't been through such a trauma. So I
yeah,
found that very helpful.
yeah. It's like people say, you know, and it's a very overused phrase. I find it's, oh, we understand exactly what you're going through, and it's like, well, although you can empathize with what they are going through, you know what they are going through, but you don't understand what they are going through. I think the word know and understand are two very different things.
Yeah,
Now, I
absolutely.
know some mathematics, game theory, and things like that, but I don't understand it to the level of complexity that you need to be a specialist in that area. And I think that's what people need to understand, is that knowing and understanding something is completely different.
Yeah,
So do you want to talk a little bit about the book then? What's the sort of
yeah.
structure of it?
Let's
What's
go
it
ahead.
all about? And yeah, who are you trying to reach?
Okay. It's really just the book is the journey from the moment it begins, bang at the moment where I collapsed, and it's a memoir, so it goes through the whole process. I'll bring it up. Got the book here. It's called the Saigon Siren, Memoir of a Stroke Recovery, with my name on the bottom there. Um, and the reason I called it Saigon Siren is because when I collapsed, I was rushed to an ambulance, and well, it wasn't even an ambulance, it was more like a courier's van from my very vague memory. And that was charging towards Saigon. And I don't remember there being a siren. And Saigon was renamed Ho Chi Minh City after the Vietnam War. So I just put the two words together, Saigon Siren, which they both didn't exist or don't exist. And that's how I come up with the title. So it's pretty much a raw, vulnerable, open hearted journey through my recovery from the moment it happened through the intensive care period, the rescue fly, the impacts of family, getting back through the processes of rehabilitating. There's lots of humour in there. There are experiences I had that I just share openly and draw some of the humour into what happened, and just talk about them in great detail. And I just take it on a journey, like we were talking about before, wherever it wanted to go. If I had ideas, I'd think of little ideas that don't even relate to stroke, but I somehow found a way to weave them into the story that helped build a narrative and helped also because writing about a recovery can be quite heavy and it's quite a dark subject. So I didn't want it to just feel like a heavy book. I wanted it to also be entertaining. So I go through that whole process from the rehabilitation to walking, getting back to making music. One of the first things I achieved once I was back out into the public, out of hospital, was I created a little 4-piece band with my songs. I was more like the manager, and the band went on to enter a local Battle of the Bands competition, local in our city in Melbourne. And through the heats, we went on and won that competition and won a stack of money and recorded a whole album. So this all happened within a year of my recovery. And while that was all going on, I also went through some radiation treatment to that AVM in my vein, trying to terminate it, which went horribly wrong. And so I've gone through radiation treatment while the band's in the studio recording an album, and I'm sort of in between hospital and going to the studio to work on the album. So all that was going on. It was just a crazy time. Getting back to driving, and then rebuilding my life. And then I sort of concluded with writing the book and how I got into writing and just wrote about writing.
Would you?
It's
Would you?
also,
So go
sorry,
on.
I was going to say, sometimes when I strip it down and just look at the bare essentials of what the book is, it's kind of like a love story about the journey of life and the love you have for living and people, and when people share and help and support and show kindness, and it's kind of encapsulates all that.
Would you consider, now that you've written a book, consider writing another book about something different?
I have, yes, I have thought about writing some more books. This is my first book, so it's only been out a few months, so I'm still now trying to gauge this whole process of promoting and running ads and doing podcasts and getting it into bookstores. So that's taken up a lot of my mental energy. So, and while that's sort of happening, I'm also been bubbling away in the background, just a few ideas on some new stories, maybe fiction, not quite sure, but
Yeah, I think
a
it's
few ideas.
the only reason I've asked is because, as we said earlier, about people with a community or a commonality. I wrote a book. My first book was, I don't know, 4 years ago now, something like that. And I thought, I'm just going to write this book and that's it. But I've subsequently written another 2 that are published, one more that is going to be published soon, and then I've started another one. And I never thought that would be the case, and that's the reason I'm asking, not to rush you to write another book or anything like that, but
Okay.
I'm just interested, because I'm interested in how people think and the mind and things like that, and it's a lot of
Did
the
you,
time,
did you,
sorry?
I was going to say, did you have intentions to write a book for years, or something you wanted to do, you thought about
The
it, and then
first
once you
book,
got stuck? Yeah, your first book.
the first book I wrote was, so, not to make this about me or anything, so I'll do like a 1 minute thing, but I underachieved a little bit as a kid. I was smart, and I then learned about personal development and started reading and listening to books. But it wasn't one book that sort of encompassed what I thought were the key areas you needed to be good at in order to be, the best version of yourself and become valuable. So I tried to write a book that encompassed all of that to make it easier for people than reading 4 or 5 different books where they had similar information in one. So that's where I started. But to answer your other question, I didn't think that really from there I would write additional books. And you never know where life's going to take you, because a real philosophical thing for me is like, ideas, do we create them or do we receive them? Because an idea just pops into your head.
Where do they
Like, is
come
that
from?
yeah? Is that based on what you fed yourself in terms of content and things like that, and your subconscious thinking of what to do with it, or is it just a case of bang, this is what you should do? Like, as in, do you actually sit down and create it, or is it something that just comes to you? No, no one knows. Or maybe there is a bit of both. Maybe you can sit down and create an idea, but also on the flip side, some of the best ideas are ones that just sort of pop into your head.
Yeah. It's about that channeling into that energy. I think that's where I think you get it's downloaded in some kind of way, but you're channeling that energy, so you're drawing it to yourself. I use this metaphor through the book where once I started the second band I created, which is called the Lion Tamers. I began writing songs, and I was getting into playing one-handed piano, and I started writing songs, and I just don't know where these songs come from. And it's exactly what you said. Did I choose to write these songs? Things were just I come up with this silly short story called The Melody Lord, where there's this Lord who lives in Melody Heaven, and he'd teleport down to Earth when I was asleep, and he'd hum melodies in my ear. And then my job was to turn those melodies into songs. And it's just that concept of where do these ideas come from? They just kept coming and coming, and I'd write song after song. And after a few years of working on this little project, we released an album. And
It's crazy, isn't it? I think especially with art, like artists, and I would include obviously physical art, musicians, authors, anything where you're creating something and you're designing something in your head. You know, you're designing in your head and then you're putting it onto paper. And obviously, two of the most famous authors of all time, J.K. Rowling or J.K. Rowling and J.R.R. Tolkien. J.R.R. Tolkien said, "Oh, one day I just opened up. I was marking some papers. Again, I might be bastardising this slightly, but I was marking some papers, and there was a blank page, and he just wrote something like, 'In a hole lived a hobbit.' Where did that? And then from there, obviously, fantastic set of books. J.K. Rowling, again, another one, just had the vision of Harry and going to wizard school, and it's like, well, how did you know that was the idea to run with? And I'm asking this not to you directly. I'm asking it as a rhetorical question. Sometimes we get this idea, we're like, right, that's it. But how do we know that that's the right? How do we know that that's the right idea? And it's a gut feeling, it's intuition, whatever you want to call it. But I find that really, really interesting and something that I don't think we'll ever truly understand. But it's something that is really, really amazing from
I
what I
think
think anyway.
I think you can't understand it. I think it's how you feel, how it makes you feel, and if you feel that energy, like I find that when I'm working on, especially music, because writing was a different process. Writing was something that I just had to log into and punch out the words. Whereas with making music, I'd absorb it and I'd have ideas and and I'd run with it, and it just become a whole bodied experience. And it just became that little spark. And I didn't know if it was right or wrong, but it just felt right. And so I just went
Yeah,
with that, and
yeah.
just how it made me feel.
Excellent. So where can people find the book and obviously even your music?
Yeah, it's the best place. The easiest way to do it is if you were to Google Saigon Siren, and that will bring up a link to many links to interviews, to Goodreads reviews, to Amazon. But surely in that first page, you will see my website, which is just antonioiannella.com.au. Hard to spell. Most people get it wrong. So that's the easiest way. Saigon Siren. You will see my website. And on my website, you'll be able to read sample chapters, see the artwork. This is another, I created this artwork myself from a sketch that I had. It's kind of a self-portrait, if you like, because I have a problem with one of my eyes, and, I'm partly deaf. So that's the idea and again, I just channel into that energy of wanting to create this whole immersive experience, from the artwork to the book to the music. They all tie together. And if you visit the website, you'll see that thread through everything. You'll be able to hear my music. You can stream it from my website free. There's links to where you can buy the book.
Fantastic. So we'll put all those up on the sort of show notes, etc. But is there anything final you want to
Sorry,
say?
Just lost you for a second.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's not your fault. My phone rang and it's kind of
Oh, okay.
did this funny thing. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Sorry, mate. Sorry,
It's
Jim.
okay. I was just saying that we'll obviously put all of that information into the show notes so people can find that.
Sure.
And is there
Thank you.
anything final you want to say before we end it?
No, no, really. Thank you for. I haven't done a podcast for. Well, this is the first one this year, and it's felt good. So thank you so much having me on your show.
No worries, Antonio. And
Good to meet
good
you.
luck with the book.
Thanks so much. Good luck with all you're
Thank you very
doing, mate.
much. Cheers, buddy.
Okay,
Bye.
take care. See you, buddy. Bye bye.